I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Donna Griffit.
And sometimes we take for granted all of the magical pieces that we have there of what truly makes us or our products, our solutions, our technology, our services so unique and so dazzling to other people. It's like if we could only see ourselves in the way that others see us, then it would be a piece of cake.
Donna Griffit, author of Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling for Startups, is a world-renowned corporate storyteller and pitch alchemist. She has helped over 1,000 startups, corporates, and investors raise over $1 billion and accelerate their sales with a personal touch and unmatched messaging savvy in any industry at any phase. My interview with Donna Griffit is coming right up. But first, support for On Brand and all shows on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by ActiveCampaign. If you're looking for a way to grow your business, you need to check out ActiveCampaign. It is a powerful marketing automation platform that can help you increase your sales, improve your customer service, and build stronger relationships with your customers. With ActiveCampaign, you can create and send email campaigns, manage your leads and customers, create landing pages, set up automated workflows, and track your results, all in one approachable platform. ActiveCampaign has over 10,000 five-star reviews on G2 from happy customers. Preview Me is one. They're a B2B software company that uses ActiveCampaign to send their prospective customers highly visual and personalized emails as they progress through CRM stages, such as completing a demo. This has increased their click-through rate 96%. If you are serious about growing your business, you need to check out ActiveCampaign. Try it today for free and see how it can help you achieve your goals. For a limited time, ActiveCampaign is offering listeners of the On Brand podcast a chance to double your contacts for free when you sign up at activecampaign.com/activate. That means if your email list has 10,000 contacts, you only need to pay for 5,000. Or you can pay for the 10,000 and get an extra 10,000 totally free. Personalize your customer experience, but do it with automation, just like 185,000 businesses have at ActiveCampaign. Go to activecampaign.com/activate to sign up today. That's activecampaign.com/activate. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Carrie Barrett hosts a great podcast called The VIQ Project. Carrie, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Okay, you know how you go to shoot a 2-minute video, except it takes 2 hours, you hate yourself on camera, you don't know what to do with it, and so it doesn't perform? You'll get all the tips and tricks you need to fix all of that on this podcast.
Wow, we're going to be lining up for this. Where can people subscribe?
You can find it on my website, which is carriebarrett.com. You can also find it if you search the VIQ Project podcast on YouTube. Of course, you can find the show at marketingpodcasts.net, or you can subscribe and search for the VIQ Project podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Donna Griffit, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. That sounded so good.
I am available as a rented introducer, so I'll just follow you around. We talk a lot about brand story, being a corporate storyteller, but when you say that you're a pitch alchemist, that has me intrigued. What is your brand of pitch alchemy?
So the reason that I started calling it Alchemy actually came from a client of mine many years ago. And we finished a session where we were working on his investor pitch deck. And he's like, this isn't magic. This is alchemy. I'm like, ooh, I like that. I'm gonna take that. Is that okay? He said, sure. So that's when I became like the pitch alchemist, because when magic is sort of an illusion or a sleight of hand, alchemy is taking one element and transforming it through ununderstood forces into a whole new element. So it's not like we're creating something out of nothing. Um, it's we're taking the existing and making it even more precious, making it even more shiny, making it something that we didn't believe it could be. It's funny. I've never actually said it in this way. This is the first time I've tried it. I love finding new kind of metaphors for it, but it's so true because I work with founders mainly of startups, and they're incredible. They have unbelievable products and unbelievable technologies and innovation, yet they are so stuck in telling it to other people, even those that have come from the world of branding and marketing, and they're all like really embarrassed about it. They're like, I used to do this for clients and now I can't do it for myself. So it's about helping them transform what they've got into something that is just dazzling.
That's such a good point too, and even the gripe that you mentioned, or the concern of founders that have worked in branding and marketing. I used to do this and now I can't. I think that is, it's so important to have. I always liken it to, we have all the jokes about the cobbler's son and physician heal thyself. But if you stick with the physician side of it, I always point out that it's really hard to do this for yourself, for your own brand. And
Yeah.
it's like being a doctor, you
Ugh.
can't remove your own appendix. I mean, maybe you could, but the angles. But
Would
the
you really
angles
want
aren't
to?
right. You're gonna it's just a perspective that's not gonna work out. And I think we think that we should just be able to easily check this box if it's a skill set that we have, but it's a dynamic that
Yeah.
we aren't in the right seat for when it's ourself that we're working on.
And it's so true. And like, even I just redid my website and I wished I had myself to kind of like clone and have me talk myself through it. And I do that in a way, because I try to remove myself from the situation and look at what other people have said, look at what, the ways I'm pitching myself and use that. But it's really hard. It's really, really hard to do that with an objective eye. And like yesterday, I gave a workshop called the X Factor, which is a personal brand storytelling workshop. And I gave it to a big tech company. And there were about 256 people on the Zoom from all over the world. And what it is about discovering and uncovering your skills, your talents, and how that brings unique value to your company. And then out of that, creating like this alchemical statement about yourself and your value, looking at those ingredients and kind of bringing them together. And I have a volunteer for the workshops when I do it, that I guide through it, and I'm gathering the ingredients and everybody's kind of doing it along with me. And then at the end, it all comes together in this story. And you see this combination of giggles and tears and like shock of like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? How did you tell that story about her? And I'm like, all I did was take everything she told me about herself in this little kind of interview we've been doing and weave it together in a way that she probably would have never dared to talk about herself in this way. And I can do that because I don't have skin in the game. I'm just here to reflect back in a more elevated way what's already there. And sometimes we take for granted all of the magical pieces that we have there of what truly makes us or our products, our solutions, our technology, our services so unique and so dazzling to other people. It's like if we could only see ourselves in the way that others see us, then it would be a piece of cake.
That's the thing. I think it's about that matter of perspective, because it's hard to see for yourself. And I'm from the Midwest, and we have this kind of modest thing that it's kind of like an added layer to get through, because we can't really, don't want to brag,
Don't
but
want to toot my own horn. It's not
yes,
modest. But if you
yeah,
don't toot your horn, who is going to? That's the
exactly.
thing. Who is going to do it for you? And that's like in today's world, you can't afford to not be tooting horns. And unfortunately, I find women struggle with it a lot more than men, because there's this double standard of, if a woman is called aggressive, a man would be called assertive, and a woman is called, it would be arrogant instead of like self-assured. it sucks. It really does.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can't win for losing, and you have to be able to tell your story in a powerful way in order to get through. But then, like, I was even just watching Succession, which I honestly did not enjoy. I just kind of was going through it, but I kept seeing the daughter. I don't know if you saw the show, but like
Yes.
out of his
Yes.
three brothers, she's the one that always was railed on for,
Hmm.
and she actually had a lot to say, but she's the one like, oh, she's really, aggressive. She's taking over, and she's not that smart, and she's not like, hello. She's probably the only one that had some smart and fresh ways. Like, what the heck?
That's such a great point. And when you talk about, I think that's something that's never come up here that I'd love to chat more about, because I know there's in talking about the perceptions related to gender and a man being aggressive, assertive, and having it be a signal of success, and with a woman it's something else. So when we add the layer of building a brand story around that for either a woman as a personal brand or a female founder,
Yeah.
what how do you approach that, knowing that double standard?
Right. Well, I mean, for me, and I wish I could say it was the surefire way, because there's always going to be doubters and haters, and there's going to be a lot of things that have to be deconstructed. I have two daughters; they're 10 and 7, and I hope by the time they reach this point that it's less of an issue. And I think it's the same for all minorities, and we're really having to break down a lot of ways we've been conditioned to think. So what I say is numbers and facts make them believers. So if you can back up the toot with an actual fact of something that you've done that cannot be changed or argued with. It's a fact that you were able to increase efficiency by X amount, decrease attrition by this much, sales were boosted. You actually had, and this is another thing I tell people, and this is for men or women or anyone. If somebody sends you a kudos email, somebody praises something that you did, somebody has like, oh my gosh, you made this difference. Ask for it in writing, ask to use the email, ask them to put it on LinkedIn, because when someone else says it, it's much harder to argue. I've got over 400 recommendations on my LinkedIn, and I honestly think that that's what closes deals for me, because when they see other people like them that have said this, then, oh, wow, then it must be true. Because if she says it, like, who is she? But other people, oh my gosh, they're saying it. So these kind of recommendations are gold. And people, as nice and wonderful as they are busy. They don't think, oh, you know what? I really liked working with Donna. I really enjoyed working with Nick. I should leave them a review. No, they'll write a nice email, and then you say, great, could we turn that into a review? And then you make it happen. So that's going to help a lot with the credibility piece.
That is such a great point, because we have these things floating around, and it's like we don't have a system for putting them to work for us. And that's extraordinary social proof, which is relevant for any brand, but especially, as you note, for personal brands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what do you think the first place an investor is going to look at is? Your LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is one of the most highly underutilized gold mines that people have when it comes to your personal brand and your company brand. And I mean, I sometimes work with CEOs that actually want me to work on the LinkedIn story for all of their sales team, because they know that they're going to look there, and you want this to be this kind of like consistent excellence and a message that reflects the company. So your LinkedIn might change if you change jobs, but don't just write where it says summary, like a little resume. There's room for that below. This is your chance to tell your story and to talk about your value. It's the difference between like a cover letter, where you can go into more detail and really kind of tell a little story there and hope that they read it. And your resume, which is just very factual and didactic and listing things that you've done. So don't miss that opportunity. It's gold, and it's sitting there right under your name and your title. So tell a story about yourself, about the value that you bring. Capture people, capture their attention. Now, I mean, LinkedIn kind of makes changes all the time, but where it says about, I don't say anything like, I did this, I've done that. I'm talking about, what storytelling really brings to the table. Use that.
And then you could take it a step further and use that headline to boil your story down into a few words instead of letting it just default to whatever your most recent job title is. Because, that our titles don't always speak to
Yeah.
what it is that we do either. On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Keith Smith hosts a great podcast called The Fuel Podcast. Keith, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Fuel is all about the advertising business. It's like Mad Men for the ears. Every show, I pick on a hot topic to discuss or interview a celebrity from the world of British and American advertising. We chat about all sorts of things, and I try and uncover the real person behind the image using just my powerful charm, incisive wit, and incredible humility.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
Wherever they normally get their podcasts, from Apple, Google, Spotify, the MPN website, or just visit my website at thefuelpodcast.com.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
Now, back to the show. You mentioned creating a LinkedIn story for a sales team, and I want to briefly come back to that just because that intrigued me. Is it a story that is going to be the same across all members of a sales team that reflects the brand story, or is it personalized somewhat to each member of that sales team?
Absolutely the latter. It's going to be personalized to each one. However, you want there to be a flavor in there, like maybe the second paragraph about how you are bringing value to the company and how you live those values and you live that excellence that you bring to the company. So there should be a mention there of it. It can't just be you. I mean, it can, but the guy that brought me into the company that I worked with in there in the fintech space, wanted there to be kind of it's almost like, okay, the Von Trapp family singers, when she made them the clothes out of the curtains. So it was the same fabric, but it was a different style for each child, and it just fit their personality. It's funny that came to mind. My daughters love Sound of Music, and so do I. But so think of it in that way. It's got the same fabric, but it's your own personal twist to it.
So I want to talk a bit about your book, Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling
Yes.
for Startups. There's that word alchemy
Back to
again.
alchemy,
So
yeah.
talk a bit about the book and how it applies to the startup space.
So Sticking to My Story has been pretty much 20 years in the writing. It's really a collection of everything I've learned in terms of fabulous messages over the years. And I've learned so much from working with my clients and seeing what worked and what didn't and making those story discoveries. And I do talk about some amazing founder stories in there that were being underutilized, that are, because stories truly stick. This is without a doubt something that, when I knew that was going to be the title for the book, But only after writing it did I realize how there's so much more to it than just, a cute little, like, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Stories stick. Stories are sticky. That's what stays in people's mind. People don't remember facts and figures and data and technologies. They remember the stories that go along with it because they can identify with it. And it's part of the human experience. And that's the magic here. So one of the stories I talk about there is the Cure Life story, where there's a founder whose father is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in his 50s, and it just completely, it diminishes his physique and his spirit, and it's depressing. And not watching his diet, not watching his exercise is helping. And Ron, the founder, set out on this quest. Like, seriously, like a Sidious, just traveling the world, Odysseus, he traveling the world to try to find a cure for his father's diabetes, and he did find it. And he's, this formulation has really helped get for hundreds of thousands of people their diabetes down to pre-diabetic level blood sugar. But I want to touch on something that's not in the book. A few months ago, Ron asked me to work with his VP sales and director of sales on their sales deck. And I said, of course, I'd be honored to. And they're really doing great and really making strides. And I get the sales deck, and it looks really nice and really pretty, and all the herbs and things that are in these supplements there. But the story, the origin story wasn't there. And when I got on the call, I said, hi, nice to meet you. Where's the story? And they said, what story? I said, the Ron and Rafi story of, like, how he set out on this quest. And they're like, oh, we're meeting with big companies like Whole Foods. They don't have time for the story. I'm like, oh, now that's where you're wrong. Because they're not going to remember the formulation and the labeling, and that you give 20% more, and then the supply chain and blah, blah, blah. They hear that all the time. What they are going to remember is, here's this person that set out on a quest, put his life on hold to help save his father's life, basically. And then guess what? The director of sales US and the VP sales both had fathers who had been diagnosed with diabetes in their 50s.
Wow.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? You are the company with people in the C-suite that have dedicated their lives and their jobs and their profession to making this happen. I mean, that is what they're going to, and when the team from Whole Foods go back and speak to the rest of their team, they're not going to say, oh, they had a really cool formulation of 36 herbs and no, they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is the company, that's saving their families' lives, and in that others. And that's what's the power of stories. And think about it. We tell stories, Nick, all the time. We impart stories about ourselves and our lives and our family, and we pass it on, and other people then are inspired and like, oh, that reminds me of the time that blah, 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 blah. So there's this whole story exchange happening, and that's magic, and that sticks.
Well, that's such a good point. And this makes me think of a story that is ironically about story, the importance of it. So my wife is the mayor of our community. And just this past week, she was invited to Washington, D.C., to talk about at a White House roundtable along with other community leaders about the recovery and reinvestment funds and what was done with that. And as they basically wanted to hear the stories from the community level, and they said that. And this point was made in terms of advocating for something by the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who said people's eyes glaze over when you go through all of the facts, the stats, the numbers, the details, the stuff that we think's important. But if you tell someone a story, to your point, it sticks. So this is everywhere, and yet for whatever reason, we are quick to dump in all of the ingredients on on what the herbs and supplements and facts and stats and figures are, and we forget that story that really connects. So if we want to do better at that, what is a first step at finding a meaningful story to share instead of a fact, a stat, etc.?
So how do we find that story? How do we look for a story like this
Yeah.
one?
How in like what story should I tell? Is it always an origin story? Is it a story of
No, not always. I mean,
impact?
if we have an origin story, we should definitely be telling it. Okay. If we have if we don't, we want to look for a story that has either happened. Sometimes we forget that we have an origin story, or the origin story might have happened, like we realized it after we started the company. And then it's okay to go back and take it. Things don't have to be chronological in storytelling. We can do like the leap around kind of thing. And the it's really magical to find moments and stories from other people that we've worked with. So it could be a place that you worked at. It could be someone that you saw suffering or going through something. It could be a client of yours. It could be something from the news. And then we just want to take these stories that are relatable and be able to tell them in a way. All we want to do is for people to be like, oh, I got it. That what you're really saying is blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. So in thinking about finding that story, once found, what are the important aspects of making sure you've got the right ingredients in that?
Well, the ingredients really are, and you could practice it with other people. It's a story that's relatable, a story that either makes you kind of chuckle or go, or maybe like get teared up. It evokes something in people and it makes them think. So you just said to me before, oh, that reminds me of a story that, so that's what you want, because there's a part of our brain called the insula that the minute you hear a story that kind of hits you in the right place, it goes, oh, that reminds me of the time that, and then that's kind of like how you go, you create that bond and that forge with people, and it's truly magical. It's
Well,
truly magical because
it
really, you know what? You know how have you met someone, Nick, where you've been like at a conference or at a meeting and you just like instantly had this connection and it's like, oh, we were totally on the same wavelength. That
yes.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
So on the same wavelength, I used to think that was just a saying, but it really is true because they've done studies where they've actually measured brain wavelengths of people listening to a story and telling a story, and they truly sync up in the moment of telling. So, and that's again an alchemist moment where you can truly influence the other side and transform something because you've got them in the palm of your hand. You're telling something so authentic and so real that they just like are swept into that.
That is such a great point, and reinforcing it once again as you talk about finding a story that produces that response that makes you chuckle. It is time for me to ask you, Donna, for a brand that has made you smile recently.
So I've been thinking a lot about this question. There's so many crazy things going on with brands right now, but you know what? I have to give it up to Microsoft. And mainly like LinkedIn within it. So they just celebrated their anniversary of 8 years since acquiring LinkedIn, and we were talking about LinkedIn before, and I know that because I was pregnant, about to give birth with my second daughter, who's about to turn 7, and I remember thinking, oh no, everything Microsoft buys, what had it been Skype, had it been this, just kind of like becomes clunky and awful. This was pre-Satya days. And I have to say, Microsoft for years was like, the uncool kid, the kind of geeky gawky one, whereas Google was always the cool kid that everybody wanted to be like. And steady, Microsoft has now made some really incredible moves in terms of integrating the OpenAI and having that right away in their offerings. Now, LinkedIn hasn't really been touched by it yet. I'm sure it will be in terms of a lot of things. But one simple feature that came into LinkedIn that I don't know how many people know. And if you don't, you should be using it. So for years, companies have been trying to do something to get rid of business cards. And nobody wanted to give up this kind of ceremony of the business card. And we all have a stack of business cards and they probably get lost and get smushed, and some get into our computers and some don't. And LinkedIn added, if you go to your search bar, when you're on your app in LinkedIn and you click on the bar itself, a little icon for a QR code comes up, and you click that QR code, and lo and behold, you have a personal QR code, and there's 2 tabs there, either your code or a scan. And it opens up like this little thing where you can scan. And instantly, when you do that exchange with someone else, it pulls up their profile and you can just right away add them. And so I think COVID killed the business card, but LinkedIn / Microsoft gave us a way to finally connect in a way that's it's right there in our quote unquote Rolodex. And we can track it, and no more business cards are needed because now we're connected, and we're connected for life unless somebody, takes you off because you annoy them. So that every time I open that now at a networking event, I'm just like, good for you, LinkedIn. Good for you.
That is an awesome story and an on-brand smile reminder there.
It makes me smile every single time.
Donna, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
My website, donnagriffit.com, no H. People want to add the H because they're familiar with, see, that's how we think. We think in patterns. So Melanie Griffith, no, it's Griffit. And so donnagriffit.com, stickingtomystory.com. And there's lots of great, if you scroll to the bottom on the footer, I've got all kinds of goodies in there for you hidden of fantastic templates that will help you with sales decks, with investor decks. And of course, if you want to talk further, reach out, and please do mention Nick's podcast, and there'll be a special discount waiting for anyone that does.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Donna, thanks for being on brand with us.
It is my ultimate and total pleasure to have been here today. Thanks for a very spot on brand conversation that made me think and come up with new things as well.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.